Hi everyone, my name is Mark with Board Game Revolution, and today we have a very special treat for you. And we're not doing a Kickstarter preview, we're actually doing a retail preview of Board and Dice's new game that is launching at GenCon, and that is Sierra West, designed by Jonny Pac. Now in this preview, we're going to go over the quick overview, how to play a game turn, and then the highlights. Well, let's dive right in. Sierra West is a 1 to 4 player deck building, hand management, set collection, worker placement, resource management game, where players will send their pioneers to frontier the land, progress their wagons, and descend the mountain in search for gold, all to see who is the best frontiersman. A player's turn is comprised of 3 phases: planning, pioneering, and cleanup or pass. In the planning phase, players will assemble the panorama from the 3 cards in their hand. These will be the resources and actions this player can take this turn. Opposing players at this time can choose to use one of their workers and put it onto the trapper action. Doing so will not let that worker move to the cabin on their next turn. Then they will pay any one basic resource and flip over one of the 2 animals shown on the original player's cards. Here we have the fox and the bear. Continuing to the pioneering phase, players can now move their workers. Each worker has a linear path that they do need to follow, but you can move them in any order that you want. Starting from the camp, a worker can move to one of the cabins matching its symbol. This cabin's effect is now active until the worker moves. From the cabins, the worker will then move up to its associated track, either green or tan. Players will then take actions moving their worker from left to right, paying any cost that is associated with that action, as well as doing the mandatory actions that are highlighted in red. After they have gotten to the end of their track, players can assign workers to any summon action as long as they have the resources to do so. The blue player begins his pioneering phase by moving the green frontiersman up into his track and taking the first action, which is a single boot. This allows either the wagon or the mountaineer to move up 1 space. Next, he assigns the tan worker to the stone resource and gathers 2 stones to a supply. He then continues the movement with the tan worker to the shovel action. To do this action, the player must spend 1 basic resource and the player spends a stone. The shovel ability activates one of 2 actions. If a player has an open cabin spot, they can spend the shovel to acquire a new cabin. Depending on which one you choose, you will pay any additional resources that is on the bottom of that cabin. No matter which cabin the player chooses, any remaining cabin that is in the red will move off the board, and all others will fill in any empty spots. The other action a shovel can do is take a face-up card that your mountaineer is on. And that's exactly what the blue player does, and puts the new card onto his discard pile. Any cards that were uncovered by this action will be flipped face up, and any specialty card will be moved down to the wagon track. Continuing on, the player will now move the green worker. He will gather the wood resource and move his mountaineer 3 more times, just like we did before. Last, he will finish off his track by gaining 1 gold into his supply. With not enough resources to move to the summit, the green worker stays where it's at. Moving forward, the next action is the fur trade. This action allows players to take resources from trapped animals. An animal is trapped when it is flipped face up and has a resource mark on the bottom right hand corner. Since the blue player has not trapped any animals yet, he gets no resources. Not having enough resources to do the mandatory action, nor wanting to take damage and losing his cabin, the blue player passes his turn and discards any used cards, drawing 3 more into his hand for his next turn. Play will continue this way until the last specialty card moves below the wagon track. So why should you consider Sierra West as your next retail purchase? Well, number 1, the planning system. In most worker placement or action selection games, you have predetermined or stagnant actions you can take every time you play. And that is whether it's a worker placement with positions on your tableau or on a board, or action selection games where they're again on your tableau or on the board. The only variation to that would be a game such as Great Western Trails, where you're actually putting on buildings that change what actions you can take. But again, those are limited and they stay stagnant after you've built them. But on this game, when you are choosing your actions during this planning step, you're changing your actions every turn. So every turn you can do something different. And it's not always going to be something that is going to be the best choice for you, but it's going to be the best at that time because you can only draw 3 cards, but you've set up this panorama so you can plan for further ahead things that you can do, which is a very interesting take on the worker placement action selection system because, again, this is very similar to Great Western Trails where you're on that rondel circular system where you have a starting point and a defined end point and you're going through it all the way to the end. Number 2, the subtle indirect player interaction that's in this game. So you may have looked at a preview of this game or a playthrough of it and didn't notice there's much player interaction, if any at all, because it doesn't seem like there is. But there actually is, and it's kind of hidden within the mechanics. First off, in the planning step, players can actually take off-turn interactions or actions against what you've played down. Here you can determine if those going to be any benefit to your opposing players. And you can actually start looking at what everybody has and be like, okay, I see that they already have a fox or I see that they have a stag. So I'm going to have a stag up and I'm going to hide the bear or the rabbit so that way they can't benefit off of you. But at the same time, if you need to play cards that have those symbols on there, you're interacting with those other players because they're taking off of what you get. Not only that, when you are going up on the board, just like in Puerto Rico, you're getting players to get bonuses as well. And those are used as actions. So here you're intertwining with each other when you're doing actions, and you have to actually pay attention to what people are doing as well as pay attention to what people need because you don't want to give them additional benefits. So you have that more psychological player interaction in this game than a physical one. Number 3, there's 4 game modes. That's right, guys, you've heard it right. That's 4 game modes in this game. You have the very basic, which is a great gateway and introduction to the game, which is called Apple Hill, and then you have progressively more competitive modes as you go along. So you have banjos and boats, gold mine, and then you have the outlaws. Each one of them having unique resources that the others don't. Like in boats and banjos, that game has a resource pool that is very limited. But at the same time, when they are spent, they go back into the pool, which allows other players to actually use them. Now, when you have gold mines or you have outlaws, the resources are not only limited, they don't come back. So you're having this more competitive type of draw to the game, more tension, because to get those points that you need, you whether need gold or you need to kill the outlaws, and it adds more chance into the game as well. So take a look at the different modes. You can take a look at Apple Hill on our preview and our live stream, and you can see how they are different. And number 4 is the artwork to this game. So this is a game that is set up with multiple panoramas that you wouldn't think actually fit all together, but they do, because in the main board you have a modular setup that is a giant mountain. Then you look at the player boards, and when you set up your panorama on from your cards to your planning phase, it's the same mountain that is on the main board. So it's actually a representation of you being at base camp and traveling through the pioneering through the frontier of the West, which is actually really kind of cool. And then as you're taking cards, that mountain begins to diminish all the way till its end. And that's actually showing you how the game ends. So it's a physical, visual representation that is a really nice, an easy and appealing thing to have. So if you like what you see here, please make sure to check out Board and Dice's booth over at GenCon, and you can pick up a copy there and meet Jonny Pac. As well as, if you can't make it to GenCon, you can always pre-order it from Board and Dice's website. My name is Marco with Board Game Revolution, and guys, if you like our content, please make sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.